Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Epic Illustrated number 18, continuing our scholarly examination of this fine magazine from the 80s. We start off with a John Bolton cover, which is illustrates a story within that he draws. Probably one of the worst Epic covers ever. There's something about this. I mean, yeah, this beautifully drawn monster, it's crazy. But the design elements, the way this is, it just looks very, it's not appealing. I'm not digging it. It's a little better than the Champagne ad. Got the contents page, overview. And we start with a nice story by Michael Saenz, long-time contributor to Epic Illustrated. This is a very prosy story. Dog in the Donor Bank. And it's about this guy who works in space. He's almost like a space janitor. He just does maintenance on this ship. And this is one of those sci-fi stories where it's almost like you could imagine Michael Saenz maybe had a bad relationship and is talking about it, because this guy basically went into space to forget a really bad relationship he had, and he describes it with kind of candor and realism that it was like, hey, I wonder if he had a girlfriend like this in real life who really fucked him up. So he's using that emotional pain to add a little depth to the story and to this main character. So he has this really dangerous job on the ship. In fact, he always picks that duty. Everyone's all like, "You're crazy." He's like, "I don't care." Like, he really wants to forget. So he figures if he has this really dangerous job, he'll definitely won't have time to think about this crappy relationship he survived. So he starts taking more and more drugs to go to sleep at night and then to wake up in the morning. So he starts having these dreams. He always has this dream about this scary dog, almost like a wolf, who attacks him. And different things happen in the dreams. This is a beautiful painting of one of his dreams where he's pulling things out of his stomach through this little, portal. But every dream ends with the dog attacking him. So he starts having waking hallucinations. He sees the dog when he's not even asleep. One day he's just coming back from work in a spacesuit, and he sees the dog. And the dog attacks him, so he attacks him back. He basically is like, "Oh shit." And as we see from this full-page panel, which is split, this is what he's seeing. This is what's really happening. This is a guy here, and our protagonist is killing him, thinking it's the dog. So the last page, he's in the brig, and he's still pretty confused. He doesn't remember doing anything, and they told him, "Hey, you killed the captain." He doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. But somehow it did make the dog go away from his dreams and from his reality. So he's truly happy for once, even though they're probably going to execute him when he gets back. This is the story that the John Bolton illustrates on the cover. Business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It's written by Chris Claremont. So this is the Marauder the She-Wolf guys teaming up for a little short story. This woman is going into this house, and as soon as she gets in there, all these like monsters and weirdos are like trying to grab her, but failing somehow. There was, like this hand comes down from the ceiling, and she walks just as it's about to, knock her head off. Here's another guy. Just really beautifully drawn. John Bolton's really good. But Chris Claremont isn't, unfortunately. Yeah, that's a nice, crazy demon. So she's taking a nice bath. And right when she gets out to answer the phone, this thing that was probably about to fuck with her comes out of the bathtub after her. So his house is full of all kinds of beasties. And then she's looking in the mirror, getting ready for a date, and she sees this horrible monster in the mirror's reflection. This is from the cover. And the monster says, "Joanna Marlowe." And she says, I told you on the phone and I meant it. Business hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And he walks off all butthurt. So that's the joke. This whole comic was for this goofy little joke. Pretty dumb. Here we got chapter 4 of Last of the Dragons, continuing with the same creative team. So now this ship is headed for America. It's got the evil priests on board who are protecting the dragons that they're going to train for warfare. Well, they already have trained for warfare, but they're going to continue to do that in the New World. And Masanobu Matsumura, the old samurai, is with them. He's starting to suspect that something's up, that they're not these innocent priests who hired him to be their bodyguard. Then we cut back and we see Takashi, the ninja, who's the love of his life was killed last issue by Matsumishi. And he decides that he's going to go to America and he's going to hunt these evil priests down and the samurai. So he books passage to San Francisco. Now we cut back to the ship with the dragons on it. And the samurai is really starting to question these evil priests. So they find land in this unpopulated area of California. And it turns out one of the priests isn't evil. He's been pretending to go along with the evil priests so they wouldn't kill him. But he tells them the story. And he says, these guys are planning to kill the whole crew of the ship at dusk. Just like they murdered the rest of our order. They figure they can conquer California with these dragons. Carve out a little kingdom for themselves. So the samurai realizes that they lied to him. And he knows that using the dragons for conquest is obscene. So one of the crewmen unloading these boxes full of dragons, these crates, trips. And one of the dragons gets out of his crate. And they're like, what the hell is that? It's a little tiny dragon. So he crushes it with his boot. And then he's going to run it through with the stick. And they kill it. So the priests realize they gotta wind up their timetable and just kill him now. So he says, break out your weapons. And also the dragon breaks free, the big mama dragon. And so between the dragon and the priest, they just massacre these poor crewmen. And the nice priest gets killed by the dragon. So the old samurai, Matsumishi, and the nice priest, he drags them off into the woods. Nobody notices where they went. And the dragon and the priest finish off the crewmen of the ship. I know I've said this before, I just love the way that dragon is colored. Such a nice blue from Marie Severin. And then we cut away. Oh, I'm sorry, before we do cut away, the samurai's a nice guy, so he stays with the priest for like 6 days until he dies, and then he buries him. And then he makes a vow of vengeance. Then we cut away. We see Takashi landing in San Francisco, and he hears a guy in a tavern talking about dragons. And everyone thinks he's a stupid drunk. But Takashi, of course, says, hey, where were these dragons? I guess this guy was the only survivor of the ship. So that's how he knows. And he tells Takashi where they embarked, or where they landed. So Takashi heads off there. This is really interesting. Peter Kuper, the cartoonist who started World War III Illustrated and, just been cartooning for decades. New York Times, everywhere. Collections of Fantagraphics. But this is him as a young man before he came up with his little, spray paint stencil style. His graffiti, whatever that is. Kind of unique to him. And it's kind of a fun little story. I definitely can relate. It's 1983. Everyone back then had nuclear nightmares. At least everyone I knew. So this guy lives in New York City. And he just keeps having like dreams and almost daydreams of just everything's like the nuclear bomb. Waiting for the End of the World by Elvis Costello's playing on the radio. Mushroom cloud comes out of his cereal. Oh, I'm sorry, that's his hot coffee, and the mist from it turns into this mushroom cloud. As he's taking the elevator downstairs, he almost feels like he's one of the bombs being dropped from a plane. Once again, a mushroom cloud. Of course, the theater is showing Apocalypse Now. He's late for his job at the taxi company. But sorry about that. He gets in the taxi and he's just driving around, just imagining what it would be like if there was a nuclear war, how the roaches would take over. He says he supposes the world would, the city would be rebuilt right on top of the whole mess. I can see it all now, robot bums drinking motor oil. So we're just seeing all of his imaginings. So he picks up a fare, and it's a Japanese guy, and he says, "Take me to the corner of Hiroshima and Nagasaki." And then he's imagining that he's the bombardier who had, Fat Man and Little Boy and dropped him on Japan. He wakes up from his dream, and in the subway, he almost feels, keeps having these daydreams. He sees everyone like cattle. Then he starts imagining that they're all in this like military transport. They're all soldiers going off to war. So he's just so lost in this gloomy, morbid thought. He bumps into this woman, and they instantly have a connection. And she seems to have the same sense of like morbidness as he does, a very sardonic sense of humor. And they walk off together. Obviously, they've made a connection. And on the radio now, it's the Police's song, "When the world is running down, you make the best of what's still around." So I guess that's the moral. We're probably all going to die some horrible way. But in the meantime, just have the best time you can. We got, I think this is chapter 3 of Generation Zero here. Beautiful Pepe Moreno art. I love this kind of shit, like showing weird little island fortresses. So this is our heroes, our 3 protagonists, have been taken to this place called Sea Haven. And it seems like Sea Haven really has got their shit together. It's a kind of a paradise in this post-apocalyptic world. And our hero, Juan, is still injured. And he's gonna die soon because he's got infected wounds. But before he passes out, he sees this woman. She's like the chief administrator. This beautiful woman. So they've got some good medicine there. They got some high-tech medical shit. And they cure him. And basically, in the next few pages, Juan gets a tour of the whole facility from this beautiful woman, Liana. Liana shows him about how they were built on a volcano, and they get all their energy from this volcano magma. And they've got agriculture and very self-sufficient. But just like Northold, where Juan's from, they kind of feel like they're just, have hiding their neck in the sand. They kind of want to, maybe they figure they should reach out to the rest of the world. But also, of course, it's scary, And we see the Earth is healing, at least parts of it. There's still some beauty left in their world, in this post-apocalyptic world. And there's a nice banquet. And Liana and Juan realize they're in love and they kiss. Just a really nice page as far as just a sequence of panels, beautiful colors, beautiful illustration. You can really see the Mobius influence in Pepe Moreno on this page. So our three protagonists realize they gotta go. They still gotta find, Juan's uncle. And Juan's really bummed he's gotta leave Liana behind, but, maybe he'll be back one day. Here we have another Bob All story. And this is, we see these two space garbage men. It's called Garbage Scow, the name of the story. And they're talking about how, can you imagine them assholes in the old days would dump garbage and crap in the ocean? Dang fools. Almost killed Mama Earth, too. Sure is a good thing the scientists came up with an answer. Yeah, dump all this junk into a separate orbit. Sure solved our pollution problems. So these guys are done for the day, and they're like, let's head home. And so this is all the garbage. And this is where people live now. This tiny little, God, it's like an asteroid. All these little houses up on stilts. So I guess this is the Earth, even though the new Earth, because the old Earth is just basically like a garbage heap. It doesn't quite make sense because, where is the Earth here? Is it under this garbage? How the hell did they get this little asteroid? I don't know. But it's nice to see Bob All's whimsical, and yet very negative stories. Here we have an interview with Sid Mead, Visual Futurist by Rick Bryant. And you've probably seen Sid Mead's work before. He's always been in Omni magazine. Well, I guess that's a dated reference, but he was whenever corporations needed something designed, hey, what will this look like 30 years in the future? They'd hire this guy. He just knew all kinds of design things, and I don't know. It's not that interesting. I never cared much for Sid Mead, though I do like this drawing. This is just a doodle he did. Totally does not look like his slick, polished art. I don't know, it's just some abstract doodle, but it's really nice. Then we have a nice little article about Go Nagai, the famous Japanese mangaka and animator. And it shows some of his characters. I think this is from Haizin Nigumencho, and this is Dororon and Makun. This is a painting that he did just for Epic. It's called Space Atlas. And we see this giant robot trying to contain the exploding Earth. All the ships are leaving. Kind of interesting. More highlights of his career. Devilman. The Satan Dante. Yeah, once again, when I saw this as a kid, I was probably 15, I was just like, this cartoony stuff, it looks so goofy to me. Look at this. I'm not going to want to read that, but now I totally do. I'm like, this looks great. This in particular looks really amazing. The Satan Dante. I guess he was basically started the whole giant robot thing with Mazinger G. That's Go Nagai, 1972. Made comics and a television series. And there's Mazinger Z. And this is nice. So Go Nagai contributes a new story to Epic. And this is about the birth of the Oni, which in Japanese basically means demon. And there's been legends of the Oni for centuries, and this is like supposedly how the first Oni started. So we're back in the feudal warlord days when all the shogunates were fighting each other and just massacring each other. There's this evil general. He's just a very bloodthirsty, evil general. And all of a sudden, a spear comes out of nowhere. He grabs it, though, in time. It's this little peasant guy. And he says, I'm going to kill you, Kagatora Demon. I guess that's his name, is Kagatora Demon. And he says, you killed my family. And, he's just a peasant kid, so he's not much of a fighter. So this guy, the demon guy, lifts him up and throws him on the ground. And he says, I'm not going to kill you right now. He tells his men to take him and torture him. Keep him alive for a week. For 10 days, and then chop off his head. So he's tied up naked to this post. And he basically makes a vow to the heavens. He says, I'm not going to die. I swear I shall survive. I owe it to my parents, my sister. I will never die. And all of a sudden, this lightning bolt comes from the sky and frees him from his post. And he starts to change into Oni, this one-horned demon. Two-horned demon. I thought that was like a unicorn horn growing, but that's just to the left side. Thus was Oni created, born of a young man's pain and anger and his desire for vengeance. Interesting, especially in 1983, getting to see any manga. I mean, I wish I appreciated it more at the time. But the whole time I was reading that, I was probably thinking, like, his eyes look funny. They look stupid. Oh, this is so nice. We get more Rick Geary in search of Dr. Einstein's brain. And we do a flashback to the last days of Albert Einstein. He dies. And they saved his brain, though. It fell into the hands of a nameless group of researchers and promptly disappeared. So our narrator here is hired by a laboratory that had dreams of harnessing the brain's vast power. He picks up the 30-year-old trail, and he's got this nationwide network of scientific informants. And this is just Rick Geary so great. Just all these guys look like just so interesting and goofy. He's very good at drawing goofy people and making them kind of just look funny. So I guess the brain's been passed around from lab to lab, each one keeping a little part for study. The largest remaining segment is traced to the city of Wichita, Kansas. So he finds a laboratory there. He realizes it's probably there. Everyone's really nice to him at first until he mentions Einstein's brain. And then they kind of hustle him out of there. So their reaction makes him sure that he's correct. He's like, okay, the brain's there. So he checks into a Holiday Inn. He breaks into the lab, and the director of the lab is waiting with a substantial security force. But then he basically says, okay, you figured this out. I'll show you the secret. And so the brain is there, and it's hooked up, and it basically supplies power for the entire burgeoning city of Wichita, the peerless princess of the plains. I don't know if that's really Wichita's nickname or if Rick Geary made that up, but I like it. Energy for her industry, her commerce, recreation, civic beauty, home and family life, sports and entertainment, and the arts. So I really had no choice, says the narrator. I returned to my employer and reported my mission a failure. Then packed all my belongings and moved to Wichita. That's how it ends. Oh, Rick Geary, I love you. So another great little story. God, Rick Geary has so many of these. Must be hundreds of great little comics. Here's like a really early Kent Williams, the great painter artist, who one of the early few artists who brought painting to comics. And this is about Tail Gunner. That's the name of this guy. I don't think there was any more Tail Gunner stories, even though the overview makes it sound like this is the first of many. It's like the first chapter. So Tail Gunner lives in this crazy world. He's a kind of a sci-fi character, action hero. And they're being attacked, him and his charge. He's like a guide who for a fee will guide people through this dangerous land to wherever they need to go. So they, I guess these like caveman looking guys were attacking them. So they escape. And his charge here kind of just has this cloak. And he keeps calling him a wizard. He says, I'm not a wizard. And this guy tells him a story. Tells Tail Gunner his story. I am a traveler from another realm. My point of entry to your world was in the lands of Elzabar, the wizard lord. And immediately upon my arrival, Elzabar attacked me and used his spells to fling me into another country miles away. He says, why'd you come back to this dimension if you got treated so shabbily? He said, the guy replies, the wizard lord Elzabar has robbed me of something, and unless I can find it again, I shall never know peace. Some more enemies attack them. And Tail Gunner takes care of them too. And then they, it turns out they're at their destination. And his charge found what he came for. And we see the skeleton up against a tree. And he says, this is what you have guided me to, my body. And he says, Elzabar killed me and then sundered my spirit from my body. He did so cruelly, knowing that a soul cannot rest in peace unless it is housed in bones. So this whole time he's been wandering the earth, not being able to rest. A restless spirit, because this cruel wizard separated him from his bones. But now he's found his bones, and he's going to claim his prize and basically jump into the bones. But all of a sudden, it's like crazy electricity. He says, what's Tail Gunner asks him, hey buddy, what's wrong? And the guy replies, another soul has found refuge in my body. He has stolen it. I am doomed forever. And the skeleton starts laughing at him. And Tail Gunner can't take it anymore, and he just breaks the skeleton in 25 pieces with his sword. And he says, hey, he keeps calling him wizard, even though he knows he's not. Wizard, buddy, is there anything I can do for you? And the guy replies, perhaps you could teach me more about your world. I think I shall be here for a very long time. Kind of a nice little story. We see Kent Williams on his way to being Kent Williams. Still trying to draw, I guess, straight. Because, pretty soon Kent Williams didn't care. He was just painting, not abstractly, but almost like, impressionistically. This is, he's still trying to fit into that, heavy metal, epic illustrated bold. But the painted colors are pretty damn nice. And, compared to most artists, this is better than most shit. I remember reading this as a kid. The first time I ever saw Kent Williams, just being like, wow, this guy's amazing. So that's it for epic number 18. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed reviewing it. And in probably a week or two, I'll be doing Epic 19. So hopefully you'll come back here to the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.